full swing. Japan is the karaoke capital of the world, but who will be on song over 12 laps of sprint action on a weekend? Marc Marquez seeks to end a 6-year drought for MotoGP glory. It's time for MotoGP. First on the MotoGP calendar, all the way back in 1999, this magnificent Honda-built complex, constructed back in 1997, 4.8 kilometers in length, 2.983 miles, 14 corners, 8 right, 6 of them left, featuring some of the most savage braking zones on the whole Grand Prix calendar. A short start-finish rate of 762 meters. Seen a few riders crash at turns 9 and 10 so far this weekend. Heavy braking, a good overtaking up spot down the hill into turn 11 before the riders power out of turn 14, the very aptly named Victory Corner here in Motegi. Look how many overtaking hotspots there are around this 4.8 kilometer layout. This was 2 years ago when they were fighting for the World Championship. Jorge Martin on Pecco Bagnaia into turn 9. So MotoGP left European shores until November. Last time out we were racing on Italy's Adriatic coast at the Misano World Circuit. Marco Simoncelli. It turned out to be a tough, intense two-rider battle for the victory. Marco Bezzecchi versus Marc Marquez has been the story of so many recent races. More home round heartache though for Pecco Bagnaia, who has bounced back in some style, it's fair to say, here in Japan. That was a crucial mid-race mistake by Marco Bezzecchi, which allowed Marc Marquez to perfectly bounce back from a rare sprint blip on Sprint Saturday in Misano. That was win number 11 in 2025, secured for the number 93. And what that means, Marc Marquez has arrived in Japan, where for the 4th time in his Grand Prix career, following up from 2014, 2016 and 2018, he can lift the MotoGP World Championship. Will we, for the first time since 2019, 6 long years ago, in what, just about 24 hours time, be saying Marc Marquez is the new MotoGP World Champion? The magic number, the buzz number of the weekend has been 3. Marc needs to outscore brother Alex by 3 points at the end of play tomorrow. 12 laps of sprint action coming your way, 24 laps the main Grand Prix here tomorrow. If Marc scores 3 points more than Alex, it is game over. It's quite appropriate that it is those 3 points that Marc needs, because he's been locked in P3 in every single session on track so far this weekend here at Motegi. 3rd in both practice sessions yesterday, 3rd in FP2 this morning, and he was 3rd quickest in what turned out to be a sensational, a record-breaking and memorable Motegi qualifying here in MotoGP. Marc given a present from one of his adoring Japanese fans. They do come armed with some very special gifts. The prize that Marc wants, though, beckons potentially here in Japan tomorrow as he looks to complete a truly dominant season in red for the factory Ducati team as he looks to be crowned MotoGP World Champion. Smiles for once on the opposite side of the factory Ducati garage earlier on today as Pecco Bagnaia delivered a blockbuster lap, a 142.911, putting him on pole position for just the 2nd time in 2025. Can Bagnaia convert that into his first sprint victory of the season? Absolutely sensational performance that was by Bagnaia. Lots of standout performances, weren't there, in this morning's Q2. Joan Mir on the front row of the grid for the first time in 59 races, all the way back to Portimao in 2022 when he was on a factory Suzuki. Honda's first factory front row start since the Italian Grand Prix Mugello in 2023. Marc completing your front row of the grid then as we get set to go sprinting here in Japan in about 25 minutes time. In the company of Matt Burt, Lewis Sillaby in the commentary box, Jack Appleyard down in what is a very hot and humid pit lane. Well, if this championship is to roll on into Mandalika next weekend over in Indonesia, Lewis, Alex Marquez is going to have to deliver something very, very special, because he finds himself down on the middle of the third row of the grid in 8th place, and he somehow has to find a way of beating brother Mark.
It's not as bad as it looked at the start of the day for Alex Marquez. We knew he had to go through qualifying 1, and boy, it was a huge fight, as big a fight as it was getting that Ducati stocked into turn 11 for Alex Marquez. But he did get himself into qualifying 2, but only as far as the 3rd row of the grid. And we haven't seen any evidence in this Japanese Grand Prix weekend so far that Alex Marquez has got the kind of pace and performance to beat Marc Marquez today or tomorrow. But that is all in the past. What's ahead of us is a 12-lap TSO sprint, where of course Marc Marquez did drop the ball last time out at Misano. So Alex Marquez is certainly going to give everything to keep his older brother waiting, but all the cards are in Marc Marquez's hands.
Shot. What a shot that was of Alex, pleading, begging for that GP24 Ducati to stop underneath him, breaking from 310 kilometres an hour down to 85 kilometres an hour in less than 240 metres. Home hopes, the big home crowd favourite, resting firmly on the broad shoulders of Ayagura, who can probably count himself very unlucky to be starting the Sprint and Grand Prix here in front of his home crowd down in 13th place. There was late yellow flag drama, as we've seen so often down the years, which cost Agura his chance to fight for a place inside the top 10, maybe even better. Didn't get himself out of that tricky Q1 session. Agura, another rider, staking his Aprilia left and right in the heavy braking zones. Yeah, that was how we were looking in the commentary box as well, as we were hoping that I could get an RSGP stopped on the brakes. He has got massive, massive home support, about to make his MotoGP debut in front of his home crowd. And of course, this weekend, the first chance that the Japanese fans have been able to see Agura-san since he won the Moto2 World Championship last year.
But the headlines this morning in qualifying 2 were taken by the Pecco Bagnaia rebirth. Is it indeed Pecco Bagnaia's return to his very best? Well, he's on pole position for just the 2nd time this season. The first pole had a little bit of fortune attached to it. It has to be said, in Brno earlier in the season, where there were some late yellow flags and a crash for Marc Marquez. Pecco did the job all on his own this time. We thought yesterday morning, when he topped FP1, that there were signs of recovery once again. Davide Tollozzi proclaimed that Pecco was back at the end of free practice 1. If he converts pole position into a sprint win today, I might well agree with him.
No sprint podium in 7 for the Italian, only 5 at sprint podiums all season so far for Pecco Bagnaia. Something of a shock, given recent form, to see the Italian head in qualifying this morning, and certainly something of a shock to find a factory Honda on the front row of the grid, so close to what would have been a fairy tale pole position for Joan Mir on screens right now, just 900ths away from pole behind Pecco Bagnaia. As mentioned, his first front row in 59 Grand Prix, first factory Honda front row since Marc Marquez qualified 2nd in Mugello back in 2023. Go Taka go! Well, that is the message from some Japanese fans who look like they're more armed, ready for a fancy dress party, don't they, than a 12-lap sprint that's coming your way here in Motegi. Yeah, Taka Nakagami, of course, if you're joining us for the first time this weekend, is a Honda wildcard here this weekend. He's down in 20th on the grid.
And down in 9th place, and the reason I say down is because we expected Marco Bezzecchi to be a genuine pole position challenger earlier on this morning. Of course, right at the start of the season, the Achilles heel for Aprilia and Bez was qualifying pace. Well, he certainly didn't maximise Q2 earlier on today, and what was a super fast Q2, with Bagnaia setting that new all-time lap record. Bezzecchi, having topped the times yesterday, was expecting to be in that battle for the front row, but the back of row 3 means that Bez is going to have to produce some serious heroics to get himself in the podium battle from there.
Yeah, very disappointing, that Q2 this morning as far as Bezzecchi's concerned. It's been a very up and down sort of roller coaster weekend. Started off with 2 crashes in FP1 yesterday morning, bounced back superbly in practice to lead the way. So yeah, we expected a lot more from Bez, 9th on the grid. Still not qualified inside the top 10 in 7 appearances for the factory Aprilia squad. That's our current and still reigning MotoGP world champion. Don't think we're going to be saying that for too much longer into the future, as Marc Marquez looks to dethrone the Martinator potentially here in Motegi. Martin with yet more work to do from 17th place on the grid, as Bagnaia then filters out of pit lane. His first ever pole position on Japanese soil in MotoGP. Always good to see the home crowd having some home heroes to roar on, and they've got a pair of them here today, haven't they? Taki Nakagami, HRC test team star, 20th on the grid, as mentioned. He's obviously doing so much key work, vital work behind the scenes in tandem with Aleix Espargaro over in Europe, because that RC213V is really coming on strong.
Well, it is a fuel-thirsty circuit, isn't it, this Mobility Resort Motegi, with so much acceleration in braking. That's where you saw Marc Marquez going at walking speed down the back straight, down towards turn number 3. Of course, it was famously here in 2022 when Aprilia forgot to switch it off on Aleix Espargaro's Aprilia, and he had to pit for a bike change at the end of the warm-up lap. Don't expect any repeats of that kind of mistake here today. Even in the sprint distance, this is a punishing circuit for rider and machine.
Yeah, this is the slowest lap you'll ever see of Motegi from the creme de la creme in MotoGP. Well, as mentioned, it's been a phenomenal home round so far as Honda are concerned. 3 bikes are fighting for pole position in Q2 this morning. The best of them, Joan Mir on the front row, Luca Marini 7th. There are going to be high hopes and I'm sure high expectations for Honda in this upcoming sprint. Let's get the thoughts from the boss, Alberto Pujo. Joins Jack. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody, under this searing Japanese heat. Alberto, what a weekend it's been so far. Both Luca and Joan have looked really, really fast. Joan, obviously, from the front row of the grid, the big question is, what's possible today?
Well, when you're in a grid, everything is possible, but it's not an easy race, of course, but at least we have some chances because the starting position is not so bad. So, yeah, they need to have a good start and see from there where we can do and what pace we can keep.
Are you genuine podium contenders, do you feel?
I have to think yes, but we will see.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Jack. Thanks to HRC boss Alberto Puig. You have to go all the way back to the Algarve Grand Prix at Portimao in 2021. The last time of any sort Joan Mir found himself on a podium. This is a golden opportunity, isn't it? Having done so much of the hard work, qualifying ultra important as always in MotoGP, but you feel more prevalent here in Motegi with all the hard braking, all the stopping you have to do. With front tyre temperature and front tyre pressure a key issue to contend with as well. We're on board with El Diablo, Fabio Quartararo. This is a very helpful downhill section here in Motegi because you can just shut the throttle and roll down the hill, save as much fuel as you possibly can. Fabio Quartararo getting a 10-mile-an-hour slipstream behind Marc Marquez.
We've got a race here between the world champions into the hairpin at the end of the back straight there. Quartararo, Mir and Marc Marquez all side by side, and all of them starting on the frontiers of the grid. The world champions amongst the field really did stand up this morning and show their class. Yes, Jorge Martin, of course, had his issues in qualifying 1, but the 4 other world champions on the grid, all inside the top 5 places on the grid.
Marc Marquez then coming to the front row for the 13th time in 17 Grand Prix so far this year. Cannot capture the World Championship in this upcoming 12-lap sprint, but over double the distance tomorrow. Can the comeback loading, which has been a hashtag trending on social media throughout the build-up to this Japanese Grand Prix, can that be comeback completed, comeback fully loaded? We are 93 fans. Campione Marc, champion Marc. Well, they're already predicting the future. Let's be honest, this is just a matter of time, isn't it? Marc said it's not imperative. It wouldn't be a disaster if he doesn't win the championship here this weekend, as Pedro Acosta, well, so anxious to preserve fuel.
Yeah,
it looks like
shut it off early.
Yeah, it's shut off. Of course, Acosta, your heart went out to the Spaniard this morning in qualifying, fastest in FP2, second quickest yesterday, and looking bang on the money for potentially fighting for back-to-back pole positions. That all went awry on the warm-up lap, or on his sort of outlap in Q2 when there was a throttle issue with his number 1 at KTM RC16, cost him 10 minutes of the session. He had 1 crack on a soft tyre, and fair play to actually to Acosta, because on that 1 chance he had, he delivered a 1:43.069, which put him 4th heading the second row of the grid. He was only 200ths away from Marc Marquez on the front row. every rider tends to find a step forward, don't they, on that second soft rear tyre. So you do feel that Acosta probably would have had big aspirations for the front row, if not better.
And surely he'll be aggressive early on. This is the front row. Bagnaia, Mir and Marc Marquez. Pedro Acosta 4th and surely eyeing the podium today ahead of Fabio Quartararo and Frankie Morbidelli, who came through Q1. Luca Marini 7th ahead of fellow Q1 graduate Alex Marquez. Marco Bezzecchi underperforming, you have to say, in 9th. Top Aprilia though ahead of Ralph Fernandez 10th. Johan Zarco 11th ahead of Fabio Di Gianantonio, who paid the price for a rather scruffy Q2 session. Ayagura missed out narrowly in Q1, 13th for the home favourite ahead of Jack Miller and Fermin Aldeguer. Aldeguer crashed in Q1. Miguel Oliveira, who used some cunning tactics to get himself up into 16th on the grid in Q1 ahead of Jorge Martin and Brad Binder, who had a big crash at turn 12 in that Q1 session. Alex Rins, another Q1 faller, 19th for him ahead of Taka Nakagami and Enea Bastianini on a missable weekend for Tech 3, with Sonkiat Chandra ahead of the second of the KTMs from Tech 3, Maverick Vinales 23rd.
As expected, as you can see on the graphics, every rider medium front tyre, soft rear tyre for this 12-lap shootout here in Motegi. Well, we're looking at Pedro Acosta. You felt there was plenty more to come from the Spaniard in that Q2 this morning. Let's go and get the thoughts of his crew chief, Paul Travath. Sure, they expect him to be in the medal hunt, Jack.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. Paul, any issues on the sighting lap there?
No, luckily we're all good, mate. We're all good. Yeah, we had a little issue in qualifying, of course, which set us back a little bit, but to be honest, Pedro come through that really good, so we're happy with how that went.
Yeah, massively salvaged it from what could have been a pretty bleak qualifying to be here on the second row of the grid. You must feel that you can go at the front and challenge here.
Yeah, I mean, you know, yesterday we were fast, but he didn't have a great feeling. We did a lot of work overnight. He did a lot of work himself on his riding, and we come out fighting today in a much better place. So he's feeling good on the bike. He looks good. Everything seems in the right place, mate. So we hope for it.
Good luck.
Cheers, bud. Thanks.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks to Acosta's crew chief, Paul Travath. He was on pole here last year, crashing out of the leader course in the sprint and then crashing out early in the Grand Prix when he was hunting down race leader Pecco Bagnaia. Frankie Morbidelli, well, he completes that second row in 6th place. Directly behind him in 9th on the 3rd row of the grid will be Aprilia Racing's Marco Bezzecchi, who has to feel a little bit like had his nose put out of joint this morning. Expected much more from Bez. A 1:43.323 was almost half a second away from pole position, and finds himself 9th, having been the fastest rider, the reference rider on Friday. This is Acosta doing a little bit too slow on his cool-down lap.
Yeah, this is on his way into turn 10, I believe, isn't it? Just at the start of the back straight. This is just how the lengths that the riders are prepared to go to save fuel. Look at him, up in a high gear, up in 4th gear, now up into 5th gear. That's the way to save fuel. High gear and next to no throttle.
Let's go back down to Jack then on the grid.
Yeah, I've got Pablo Nieto with me next door to Frankie Morbidelli, who did a good job in qualifying, and in particular in that free practice 2 session looked pretty good on used rubber. Is the podium an obvious target, but potentially this one does look wide open.
Yeah, we will try, no? But always we know it's going to be very, very difficult. We know also that it's very important first lap, first corner, but also in this track is more possibilities to make some overtakes. So it's going to be hard, but we have to try to make our best.
After a good day for Didier yesterday, didn't put it together this morning. What was the reason for that?
Yeah, maybe the crash that he made in FP3 wasn't in the right moment. Always, when you have a crash, you lose a little bit the confidence. Then the qualifying wasn't not so good. But anyway, I think he can make also a very good race. Like in this track, also it's important to try to make overtakes and then try to make something important, like always.
Thanks, Pablo.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. Thanks to Pablo Nieto. Of course, a massive weekend beckons over in Indonesia next weekend for the Pertamina Enduro-backed VR46 racing team. I'm sure you're aware, of course, Indonesian fans, next Tuesday over in Jakarta for the very first time, Valentino Rossi will be joining his riders, Frankie Morbidelli and Fabio Di Gianantonio, for a special Indonesian Grand Prix pre-event. So no excuse, Indo fans. You've been asking for Valentino Rossi to make a trip to that part of the world for so many years, and he is coming to Indonesia next Tuesday for what I'm sure is going to be a packed out pre-event. Under blue skies, as you can get an indication of how hot and humid it has been so far here this weekend, Marc Marquez and Alex Marquez both seeking a bit of shelter, a bit of sanctuary in their respective Ducati garages. Sweltering heat and humidity it was here yesterday when we were seeing ambient temperatures just tipping over 30 degrees. It doesn't feel a lot cooler, I have to say, here today. Wonder how Joan Mir's feeling from what is a very, very, very rare front row start in MotoGP. Pecco Bagnaia. Well, Davide Tardozzi told Jack yesterday that Bagnaia is back, and that was proved this morning in qualifying. Back with a bang, wasn't he, with that second pole position? What are they prospects? What do they think Pecco can deliver in this sprint upcoming? Jack, down to you with Davide.
Yeah, this is a really fascinating one, Davide. For you, who's the favourite here, Pecco or Marc? Because I can't decide between the two.
Yeah, I'm really pleased to have Pecco back, and that the engineers found the way to give him back the confidence that he deserves. So we'll see. I think that it will be a very tough race, because the opponent, it seems that are very fast also on the race pace. Acosta shows something important. Hondas are very fast. Bezzecchi too. So we'll see, because we did a good qualify, but race another thing.
Marc said yesterday that the priority is the championship over wins this weekend, but do you believe him? I don't. It's Marc Marquez. Surely he's gunning for victory.
No, I believe it, because Marc is thinking now to the championship. We spoke a lot about that, and Marc is fully concentrated to gain those 3 points on Alex, and that's the target. Then in the future we'll see whether he will be champion, 2025 champion. He can think about winning races, and that's it.
Thanks, Davide. Good luck.
Thanks, Jack, as always. Thanks to Ducati boss Davide Tardozzi. So our pole sitter Pecco Bagnaia started the season with 3 successive sprint podiums, 3 successive third places in Thailand, Argentina and in Texas. Since then, though, the medals have been few and far between for the double MotoGP world champion. Only 2 since in Jerez, and his most recent one feels like an awful long time ago, doesn't it? In Mugello, in front of his home crowd. He's been nowhere in the last 3 sprints. 13th in Hungary, 14th in Barcelona, 13th in Misano. I think that's why we're all so... We're happily surprised, Lewis, but so shocked to see Pecco in the space of a fortnight go from almost rock bottom back to a record-busting time in qualifying. It's been a heck of a transformation in such a short space of time.
And I never thought I'd be waiting until the 27th of September for Pecco Bagnaia to take a sprint win in 2025. Not since the final sprint of 2024, when Bagnaia was trying to secure an unlikely World Championship comeback. Has Bagnaia been successful on a Saturday? Well, for Alex Marquez, it's been a damage limitation job already today. He got out of Q1 and qualified in the middle of row 3. Can he go forwards from there? Michele Massini is talking to Jack.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the big question. It was a tough Friday for Alex. Better today so far, but has he found that feeling that's going to allow him to attack in the sprint, Michele?
I have to say that today we find some feeling, especially in the front braking, like yesterday we struggled, as you said, and I think that we can make a good race today, but at least we have to overtake 3-4 riders in the first lap, I think, because it will be crucial, and then we see if we can take also some data to use for tomorrow.
Thanks, Michele. Good luck.
Welcome.
Thanks, Michele Massini. Thanks to Jack. Only 1 race this season previously has Alex started lower. That was 11th in our first visit to the Balaton Park circuit in Hungary. Just a quick reference on the 2 Red Bull KTM Tech 3 riders. They've had a nightmare experience here in Motegi. Maverick Vinales, 23rd, his worst ever grid position in MotoGP. And it just shows fine margins. Poor Ordineo Bastianini missed out on the direct spot in Q2 yesterday by 9 thousandths of a second. I mean, what's that, half a bike length, a quarter of a bike length? And having missed out on that spot in Q2, going into Q1 this morning, nothing really going for the Italian. 21st on the grid, not even starting inside the top 20 when he was 9 thousandths of a second outside of Q2.
Looks like a late change of equipment coming there for Luca Marini. That was his crew chief, Christian Pupelin, who was running back onto the grid with Luca Marini's crash helmet in his hands. So Luca Marini perhaps reporting something on the sighting lap, which requires a change of helmet. There's Jack Miller getting ready to attack, like we know Jack Miller will. He goes from 14th place on the grid. Well, it felt like an underperformance for Aprilia with Marco Bezzecchi qualifying 9th. Surely he will be looking forwards to Paolo Bonora, speaking to Jack.
Yeah, it's been such a strong run of results for Marco of late, but just couldn't put it together in qualifying. Paolo, how much is that going to hamper him in this?
Yeah, he didn't put all together, as you said. Unfortunately, he had the lap time possibility, the time attack possibility, but he didn't put together. And in the split 3, he didn't do as best as he can do. But despite of the not a good qualifying, we keep the finger crossed because we totally trust on him and also in Jorge, because here there is some places where you can overtake somebody, and to be honest, in particular for Marco's side, he has a good race pace. So probably not today because it is much shorter distance, but for tomorrow we hope that he will do a better result.
Thanks, Paolo.
Thanks so much.
Thanks to Aprilia boss Paolo Bonora. We just looked there at what is very soon to be our outgoing MotoGP World Champion Jorge Martin, 17th on the grid. Marc Marquez then. This time tomorrow, we could be hailing him as the 2025 MotoGP World Champion. Well, he's that young fan's hero. He's so many riders' hero, isn't he, around the world? Marc Marquez. It has been some journey, some adventure over the last 6 years. 2019, that must feel like an awful long time ago as far as the 32-year-old Spaniard is concerned. He was on the floor this morning, a crash at turn 5, as so many riders have found that hard-braking zone into that right-hander of turn 5. Tricky to negotiate so far this weekend. The BMW safety car then peels away at the front of the grid. 3 minutes we are then until lights out for our 17th Tissot sprint of the campaign. A victory in this 12-lapper will see Marc Marquez actually tie Jorge Martin in the all-time winners list of sprints. Martin 16 sprint victories, Marc just one behind on 15. 14 of those he's collected already so far in 2025. Keeping himself as cool as possible then in these hot and humid conditions here in Japan. The heat very soon will be on in terms of the championship chase. Marc Marquez then on the front row of the grid for the 13th time this season. Joan Mir on the front row of the grid for the first time on a factory honour, the first time in 3 years in Portimao. But back on pole position, back with a bang, is Pecco Bagnaia.